Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Iron show. This time it's David Moyes. Is it time to go? And we are currently halfway through the season, so we thought this is a great time to do it, especially in between the Wolves and the Everton game. And it's a big debate. A lot of people are swaying towards, yes, Moyes should be sacked, but let's just go through it and dissect it and whether it would actually be a sensible thing to do this now or not. So, Mike, let's start with just let's just talk about how Moyes is talking after games, because that is very telling, and especially after yesterday, the defeat against Wolves at the weekend.
Yeah.
He said a lot of stuff, and let's just get through it. What do you think?
When you look at what's being said, you would actually think that we are actually playing quite well, and that it is maybe the rub of the green hasn't gone our way. It sounds like some of the kind of stuff you would hear from a new manager who's just coming in, who's not had the rub of the green yet, just saying, look, it's going to happen. We're clicking into gear. But this is an existing manager who's been with them for nearly 3 years. The tactics haven't changed. He's still trying to deploy the same tactics. His comments are, again, alluding to the fact that if we keep playing as we are, things will change. Now, we're 19 games into the season. We've won 4 games. Nothing is changing. We've maybe pressed a bit higher in the last few games, but ultimately we still have such a defensive attitude to football that, we don't have players in positions in which to capitalize in transition. We don't have players who understand their role or their positions in the final third in which to create spaces or to run between the lines of the defence, or how to even work the ball into the defence. And in particular, the penalty area, our last few goals have all been outside the area by penalties. So again, it's, there's a clear issue that hasn't been addressed. And
what do you think the biggest issue is right now? Because there's a few. Let's just go through a few of the issues that we could discuss. So the first one is tactics, and like you mentioned, how defensive we've been. The second one kind of comes under tactics, but the lack of cohesion and the lack of idea, and the lack of just looking like a team that breaks teams down and creates chances through methodical play. The third one being the players' trust in the manager. Has that gone? So what do you think out of those three is the biggest impact right now?
I think at the moment the players don't know what's being asked of them. So you could say that player trust is gone. You could say he's lost the locker room, or you can just say simply that what's been worked on in training isn't translating on the pitch, and players just don't quite know as to how and where they should be in which to capitalize on certain situations. We don't seem to necessarily target weaknesses, or if we do, again, it's sporadic. We called out previously about the Wolves game about pressing their backline. Now, our best opportunities in that first half came when we pressed their backline and we capitalized on maybe winning the first or second ball from a clearance, or even intercepting a bad pass. But again, that was sporadic. We didn't do that consistently enough in which to apply pressure. Again, we didn't apply pressure much to midfield. So I think ultimately it's the tactical messages being told and what they're being trained in terms of, situational points is not good enough. And again, I think the clear example is how we go from scoring set piece after set piece over the last few years to not being able to hit a barn door from a set piece. Teams have sussed this out. They've worked out how to nullify our counter-attack. They've worked out how to nullify us at set pieces. And one of the other reasons why we're struggling at set pieces is because other teams have a fair amount of pace in their teams.
Yeah.
And they have players positioned throughout their team with pace who can stop us, because we are very one tone in our level of pace, and we can't. We'll maybe beat a player in the first initial 2 or 3 yards, but then they're caught up with because they don't have the pace in which to have a sustained breakaway. Even Antonio, who people keep saying is fast, can't run like he used to. You can clearly see he cannot. He doesn't have the pace in which to press players or to even run with the ball as he has even last season. He just looks too heavy. He looks slow. He looks labored and ultimately looks uninterested. And I think that's another problem.
Yeah.
Players look uninterested. Now, if a player's uninterested, one, why are they in the team? And two, is that just because the manager is weak in his selection and playing them because they're causing a fuss and back, behind scenes? And also, if a player looks uninterested, that's on the manager to get that player motivated. If he can't get that player motivated, they shouldn't be in the team. Just look at what the Zebri has done with Trossard.
Yeah.
Wasn't happy with his attitude. Another player people are calling for. Like, seriously, there's red flags there. He was told to get a new contract, came back, didn't get the contract offer he wanted straight away, had a strop, had an argument with a player. His manager turned around and said, you need to sort out your attitude. Continued to strop, dropped him.
Yeah.
And his response was to get on the Eurostar to Belgium. So it's like, and people were saying, we'll get him to the bowl. It's like, really? No. We're having an issue at the moment with players and attitudes. That's what we're kind of being told. There is some kind of ruptions in the team in terms of those kind of attitudes. And it's, why do you want a player who's actively dropped tools because he's been told by a manager, I don't like your attitude, and he just walks off?
Something Moyes also alluded to, which has been a reoccurring theme, which is what he said throughout the season, especially towards the earlier stages, was, he's spent all this money. We've got a lot of players in. He needs time to integrate, and the players themselves need time to integrate. Is that excuse still valid now? Now we're halfway through a season.
Never valid. Keep saying we've got to integrate these players. Tell me, like, seriously, how many players has he really integrated into the first team? When you look at that team that we put out yesterday, where are all of these new players?
I think there was 2 new players in the starting 11, which was Paqueta and Aged.
So it's just a convenient excuse. I need to integrate these players. What's happened is he's brought in these new players, and players who have not had competition for about 2 years because of essentially his decision and the board. So they're complicit in this. Let's not remember last season we made 2 subs in the summer, one of them being Vlasic, when we could have probably bought 2 players for that price of Vlasic. And even he was integrated poorly and shipped out. And now we're losing £12 million or whatever it is, because again, we shipped him out and went, oh yeah, just give us like 12 million quid. And that's now he's performing really well in Serie A. We probably would have got our money back, or at least a large percentage of that back. But again, it's poor man management, not knowing the player, not knowing how to get the best use out of him, and a complete lack of willingness in which to augment your shape or your tactics in which to complement or to integrate that player. It just buys player and goes, oh, it doesn't quite fit in. Well, I'll just ram them in there anyway. And if they don't perform, I'll just dig them out in the press and I just won't play them and I'll ignore them. People shouldn't overlook the interview that Ben Johnson gave when he was asked about Moyes. And he said, yeah, he's a good guy. But he doesn't necessarily speak to as many older players. He does with some in the squad, mainly the kind of main starters, but others are kind of, basically a bit aloof with. Like
one thing people leaning towards Moyes often say is around the players is he hasn't had a fully fit, best 11 to choose from. When you look at the injuries to Zuma, injuries to Aged. Again, with Scamacca's had problems, even Maxwell Cornet potentially as well. What I'll say to that is I completely disagree, because you look at someone like Arteta, right? He had a lot of injuries when they lost their first 4 games of last season, and people were calling for him to be sacked, but he was still playing the way he wanted to play, which is the same way he kind of plays now. He just didn't have the personnel to fit it, and now he does. And he said, look, judge me once I've got my proper players back and I've had a couple of transfer windows to transform his team. Moyes has been at the club for over 2 years now. He's had this summer to transform and compete higher from 6th and 7th place finishes, which he often, brags about in his interview. Even the interview against Wolves, he said about that. What I will say is to people saying, Moyes needs to have his fully fit 11. Even if we had our fully fit 11, the approach would still be the same. It wouldn't be the approach we need to take to develop as a club. It would still be keep it tight, keep it defensive. And he would probably be playing like Cornet, for example, as someone that on the more defensive side. He would be playing him as in that wing-back role.
I think the Chelsea game just sums up.
Yeah,
practically a full-strength team in that game. We go there. Chelsea were poor, and only when we went down did he actually go, "Oh, maybe we should attack this."
Yeah.
Cornet came on, made a bit of a difference. Obviously, he was unlucky with a header. Should have scored, but didn't. And then obviously we were absolutely robbed. That's the only occasion where I'd say pure bad luck has affected us.
Yeah.
But that bad luck thing is now perpetuated through the squad. Even Bonnie yesterday was talking about, it's bad luck, and it's not bad luck.
It's what Rice said as well. He said in his interview, he said it's just not going for us or something at the moment.
Yeah,
something around those lines.
There's no responsibility. There's no, there's no one standing again that we're not creating in the final third. It's got nothing to do with luck. We've just not been good enough. Yeah. There's no responsibility. The moment you say it's bad luck, you are absolving yourself of any responsibility and essentially saying, well, it's in effect saying it's up to the gods. You have absolved anything past going, it's bad luck, because you're saying it's something out of your control when everything that is happening is perfectly within their control. There are always variables, like you can't control the bounce of a ball, but a bounce of the ball hasn't impacted us in terms of winning or losing a game.
Yeah.
It's been our own indecision or poor decisions. And this is also coming from manager. He's indecisive on the touchline. His message looks to be unclear to the players. And if it's unclear, then they're going to go out onto the field and be unclear and not knowing what to do. Yeah. The fact that we can only score from outside the area also paints another picture. We clearly don't understand how, when in the final third, to work the ball into the area, to pull defenders around, to create shooting opportunities. Yeah. So what we really seem to be working on clearly is, right, lads, let's get a set piece. Let's hope it lands on someone's head and it goes in, which isn't happening. And, right, we're going to press a little bit higher at the moment. But if they beat that first press, it's all get into shape and then just sit and hold and hope we nick something and then try and hit them in transition from about 10 yards further back than where we used to. We have the lowest defensive line in the Premier League.
Exactly.
And we don't have pace. You can't play that deep if you don't have the pace to get out.
Yeah.
Whose responsibility is that? It's Moyes, because he has a preference for experienced players, for players who like to run. And we've said it all summer that we're at a point where we have the oldest team. We've replaced Burnley, not just in the fact that we have the oldest team, but also in the way that we're playing.
Yeah.
There is nothing really there apart from get it down the wing, whip it in the box, hope someone nods it in. It's devoid of any real cohesion or real plan. We'll try and hold it tight. If we concede, we'll open up a little bit. But it's still, even then, we hold it tight. Even if we're 1-0 down, we'll keep it tight up until 70 minutes and then we'll try and play for the last 30. If you watch Sunderland when they got relegated with Moyes, it is exactly the same. They were hard to play against at times and they were difficult to score sometimes against. But the moment you got the goal, that was it. The game was done. The game was won.
I think it's very clear that we are a very reactive team and not proactive. Like in our approach in the game from the very first moment that the whistle goes, and also as soon as we inevitably concede the first goal, it's like you mentioned. We keep it tight, and then we hope for someone like Ben Rama to jail us out. He throws him on and says, "Go on, just score me a worldie or make something happen. Skamaka, get on the pitch. Let's go 4-4-2. Just pump balls into the box and hopefully get a header or something." There's no plan. There's no methodical approach to breaking a team down, and that has been the biggest issue since last season. We were mentioning this, that we can't break teams down. We can't find patterns of play to find those spaces, and now we are halfway through a season, and this is what the table looks like. We've been on our worst run since, like you mentioned, Avram Grant in the Premier League, and we've now lost 6 of our last 7 in the Premier League. So we find ourselves deep in a relegation battle, and the likes of Rice saying, we're not in a relegation battle. We'll, a few wins and we'll back up in 7th. Well, no, a few wins now gets us 11th, and that's that's assuming that no one else is going to pick up any points from now in the next 3 games. And
look with Nottingham Forest are. They were rock bottom of the table at one point, looking awful. Now people will go, well, they trusted in Lee Cooper. It's like, but they also had a shed load of players that were getting together, and they've picked up a couple of decent wins. And yes, they did entrust their manager, which has seen a turnaround of sorts. But again, it's with those that you can actually say there's a mitigating circumstance in that not only did they give him a new contract anyway, so that was likely never to happen, but the fact they had so many that once it did click, or they was always likely to get maybe a couple of results. But the fact is, all of the teams that are down there have made a change, and it's had a positive result, apart from Southampton. But again, they just beat Man City in the cup. They just beaten Everton in the league. Everton haven't made a change, nor have we. And we, as both of those teams look in absolute free fall.
And what I'll say about Nottingham Forest and Steve Cooper is, although they didn't change their manager, he's changed his approach. He's realised that they can't play the way that he necessarily wants to play with those players. He's gone a bit more defensive and compact, and he's got the pace on the counter-attack to hurt teams. That's why they beat Liverpool at home. That's why they beat Spurs in the Cup at home. That's why they've just beat Leicester. It's why they've got the success that they've now got. It's because they've got a manager who's willing to adapt to the players that he's got and has a different style or approach to the game. Mm-hmm. We don't have that in Moyes. He has one way, which is keep it compact, keep it tight, hit teams on the break, or get an odd goal and then just be tight after you're 1-0 up. But the problem is we don't have the pace, like you mentioned. We don't have the clinicalness. We don't have anyone like a Jesse Lingard who's going to run through with pace and, link up with Antonio, who, like you mentioned, is not fast anymore. A couple seasons ago, he could do that. And it worked. Him and Lingard, it was working brilliantly. We don't have that middle runner now. We're playing a midfield three of Rice, Souček and Paqueta. We don't have those that necessarily number 10 who's making those runs in behind, which then gives Bowen space and allows Fornals to drift in, which is the success we saw for 2 years. We don't have that anymore. So you can't just continue playing the same way.
And the thing is, there are times where you can have teams that don't have pace. Like, we could be as we are and still be successful, but you have to then have exceptional movement in which to then be to kind of capitalize on any mistake. Our movement is terrible. It's absolutely awful, and that is on the manager. Yes, the players have to take a level of responsibility for what they do on the pitch, and once they go over that threshold, it's the manager doesn't have control. But what is true is that the manager is the one that is instilling into them week after week, this is what I need you to do. This is where I need you to be in this situation. They're weak here. So if this situation happens, I need you to be in this position so we can capitalize. It seems to be none of that. It just seems to be, we'll lump it up top. We'll try and play for the second ball. And then if we get the second ball, we'll free ball it from there. And there's just no real understanding of what we're doing, and there's the excuse of players been injured. They have. Other teams have had players injured and they're performing. The other one is that, he's been integrating players. Paqueta's really the only one who's really played. Obviously Kera's coming, but he's coming because of injuries. Let's be honest, if it wasn't for injuries, the only players that would be getting integrated into our first team would have been Paqueta, Aged, and then potentially it would have been Scamacca. But there have been 3 players that have been integrated. 3 players being integrated into a team happens at every single club. Why is West Ham so special that we can't integrate 3 players? If we can't integrate 3 players into the first team, that is not just that's not basically the players. That's the manager. The manager is incapable of understanding what those players do to incorporate them into his tactics in which to get something out of them. And quite frankly, the whole, he has credit in the bank. No, he hasn't. There is no credit in the bank. Football, sentimentality and sentiment in football is only in fan bases. It should only ever be in a fan base. Fact of the matter is, football is absolutely, I know people say it's throwaway culture, but football has always been throwaway culture. It's always about what have you done for me lately, really, in football. And at the top end of football, if you want to be an elite club, it's if you are not performing, and this is also in business, in any normal business, if you as a manager who's not performing, or if you've seen going from here, all of a sudden dropping down, the response is we need to change the manager, because we can't necessarily change the underlings, so to speak. We maybe have to look at the manager and see what's going on there. And if they can't get that team to perform, we're going to have to issue warnings to them as well as those. And quite frankly, football is a weird business in that you can't do that with essentially players. So you have to, the only disposable person in which to get the best out of that team is a manager. And we are persisting with someone who constant rhetoric is, if we keep doing what we're doing, we'll do better. every game. Well, we didn't play that badly. Oh, we lost because of a bit of bad luck. There's only so many times you can say it's bad luck before you actually then go, maybe I need to change something. And if you're unwilling to change something and you're going to kind of essentially throw out a comment of bad luck, which is essentially saying, I'm taking zero responsibility for this, because I'm essentially saying that there's something in the ether that is stopping us from getting what we need. It just says that, well, why should your players take responsibility? Because they will just come out, and we've seen it in press conferences, going, oh, it's bad luck. Things are just not falling for us. Make it fall for you.
Yeah.
Run harder for that extra 5 yards. Don't just stay in your shape. Maybe break out of your shape once in a while. Try to take the initiative rather than just sitting there and being passive. And this is the thing, it's the constant thought process of, well, you know, we're in these games. Well, you're in the game by a scoreline, but you're not really in it. And the people keep talking about XG. Again, it's an accumulation of shots. It doesn't necessarily state that you have been in control of the game. If you had 20 shots in the game and they're all terrible, they're all going to accumulate up to potentially saying that you probably should have scored a goal, because you've had that many shots that is going to accumulate into that.
Yeah.
When we have a penalty, that's like a 0.7% chance of a goal.
Exactly.
So when we have those games where we had a penalty and we've missed it, and then people go, oh, but look at the XG in that game. Yeah, we had a penalty. They're practically almost viewed as a goal. It's literally like a 70% chance you are scoring. So yes, of course, that's going to make you look better.
Yeah, I think overall it's just like we've mentioned, it's a calamity of everything right now. And I think we're both pretty much in agreement that Moyes should be sacked. I think that's very clear from our approach to this video. But yeah, and I guess that just to end this, so we're both very much Moyes out. Let's play advocate just to end this. Is there a danger in doing it now with how we know we will recruit the manager? Because the board have said they're not sacking Moyes because they feel like that is the sort of manager they would bring in to a relegation battle that would be available. So they're not going to go out and buy out a manager who's currently in a job. They're going to pick someone up who isn't in a job and probably has Premier League experience and probably someone that they know. So that's the only danger of sacking Moyes. That's the only reason I'm hesitant to do it, because yes, there are better options out there, but are the board going to do it? You know, are they going to bring in a manager that suits this style of play and is actually a progressive manager and a progressive appointment overall? What do you think?
My view is that they want out anyway by April time. That is my view. I'm not changed by ITK saying it's not the case. My view is they want out, especially after, God rest his soul, David Gold, obviously, dying and so on.
Yeah.
But so for that, the way I look at it is that they're looking at this as, well, we have 3 months at the club. We want to limit our expenditure in that 3-month period. Hence why we're only looking at really loan deals again, and also loan deals with obligations or loan deals with options, because you put that on the next board to come in, the next set of management group to come in, or investor, right?
Yeah.
So they want to limit that expenditure. So they're kind of hoping Moyes will turn it around, because it's probably going to cost them about 10 million quid to get rid of him. Then it's bringing in a new manager, bringing in new staff. So that deal goes from, like, say, 10 million to, say, 20 million potentially.
Yeah.
Just as a package. Obviously, they've never paid, or at least Gold, Sullivan and Brady never paid for a manager to come to a club, never paid Compo. They either asked that manager to resign from the current club, which they've done before, but they've never paid it. So again, seeing them pay for it, you don't see it happening. So there is many arguments to say, well, better the devil you know, and we may get worse. We may get Deitch is another example that people would say. Now, obviously, as a style, it's going to be. Obviously, he has talked about he wants to be a bit more expansive, and he's never really had the chance because he's never had the players. But again, you kind of look at it and go, if Deitch was to come in, it'll probably be a short-term deal. Same with Rafa Benitez. You feel that any deal that they would set up is going to be a deal that will be, say, to the summer as opposed to a long-term deal, because their eyes and their view, I don't think, is long-term. So it is that everything is short-term. It's short-termism at West Ham. And again, they're looking at David Moyes going, well, in the short term, he could improve. And that will hopefully get us through to the end of the year.
I think they're just waiting for a win.
Yeah, I think the truth of the matter is we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. Because at this point in time, there are no real signs in there that this team have the confidence in which to get a win. Now, an ugly win against Everton may spark a rejuvenation, and we could then go on and actually do really well in the next set of 3 and actually surprise ourselves.
Yeah.
That could happen. Or, as easy as that could happen, we could lose against Everton. We could then get spanked in the next 3. And then that's another 5 defeats in a row.
And then we're in trouble.
Bottom of the table. And then going, well, we've just wasted 4 games. We're now 23 games into the season. And effectively saying that we now need to go out and get at least probably 15 to 20 points to stay in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, that's you have to win a far larger majority than anything else. So I think, and we said it, and it's been said before, there's many things that are drawing comparisons to the era of Grant.
Yeah.
Now, Grant is statistically one of our worst ever managers. Moyes this season is doing worse than Grant did in his one fateful year at this stage of the season. Mm-hmm. So if Grant was sackable, or at least they tried to sack him, then Moyes has to be by that reflection. Pellegrini was better than him, was then also removed from his job after losing his first team goalkeeper and having to employ a clown, which was enforced upon him by the board.
Yeah.
He wanted Mendy, was told, no, you can't have any money for a goalkeeper. Go get 2 free goalkeepers. And let's not remember, that was bragged about by a certain insider site. And then afterwards was lambasted and said, oh no, Roberto was always his number 1 goalkeeper. The narrative changed. It was just ridiculous. The Pellegrini was sacked because of what happened there.
Yep.
So when you look at the managers that have been sacked in the past by these lot because of where they've been performing and how we are as a club, Moyes has to go.
Yep.
Getting us to a semi-final is irrelevant. The simple fact of the matter is we are harping on about we got to a semi-final, therefore this manager deserves time. By contrast, Thomas Tuchel got Chelsea to the Champions League final and won it. Yep. Granted, there was a change of board, but they looked at it and went, we're not playing well enough. Now, Grant is still not playing well enough. I think he's won 40% of all Chelsea's points that they currently have this season with Tuchel. But they made a very decisive point of, ain't happening. Things ain't going well. You are gone.
Yeah.
So we're talking about we got to a semi-final. That guy won him a bloody Champions League and he was out within months.
I think that's the big point, isn't it? We can't dwell on the past. So we're both pretty much in agreement that Moyes has to go, regardless of the options available. I know it's a dangerous game, but like you mentioned, it's not going to change. It doesn't look like it's going to change. We've had ample opportunities. Moyes has had ample opportunities to change that 11 and get it right, and he still continues to get it wrong, and the approach is wrong. So we find ourselves 18th. The whole of 2022 was just awful. I think we picked up 37 points or 36 points from 40 games or something in the Premier League, which is just diabolical. So it's not like a recent string of, just 7 games. It's been continuous for 40 plus games. It's been very much European football has papered over these cracks. And now they're starting to show because we're in a very fragile position in the league and we need to change it. So yes, in conclusion, we are both very much in the agreement where with saying Moyes has to go, and we don't expect him to, but yeah, we'll see what happens this week, and we'll see what happens before the Everton game. I don't think there'll be a change, but there could be. And then if we lose that Everton game, there's no way he keeps the job. So we'll have to see. Let us know what you guys think down below. Are you Moyes in or out? We think the majority probably will be Moyes out, but there's probably a few of you that are still remaining with Moyes in. So let us know why, and maybe we can have a bit of a debate in the comments, and we'll say our opinion as well.
And what I would say, those who are saying Moyes in, and when it comes to why, without talking around transitional period and talking around our Europa League form, it's purely on this season. Why does he deserve to stay? That's what I would say. Yeah. We can't keep reflecting back on what someone's done.
Yeah.
Because someone can do so many good deeds and then they do something bad, and you get punished on the bad thing you did, not the good, and not kind of relieved because of the good thing. We have to analyze the situation we're in and actually go, what is the trajectory? Because yes, what we did in the past was great, but that's not the same team we're seeing this year. Yeah. So if you can articulate as to what you see within there, and also without the point of, I don't know what else is out there, that's not a good enough response as to why to keep him.
Yeah, just judge it based on how Moyes has done this season, and whether you think maybe the players are at fault or there's something else, regardless of what Moyes has done. And yeah, just let us know your opinion. Also, make sure to follow us over on Twitter at Babbling Irons, and we'll also engage with you guys there and do a lot of interaction around this topic and other subjects. So yeah, make sure to leave a like on video, subscribe to the channel. We are posting very regularly so far this year, and we plan to continue. And yeah, we'll see what happens with Moyes. He could get sacked before this even goes out on the Monday, as we're recording it on the Sunday. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Big game against Everton next week, and we expect Moyes to be in the job. But let's see what happens, Mike. And yeah, one thing left to say.
Come on, you guys.